for whatever reason, we were having technical issues and we lost the stream. We're getting the stream back up again. I'm refreshing everything. We'll do a quick recap of all the stuff that we've been talking about, and then we will continue forward where we're at. So let me just refresh and make sure all the stuff is back up again. Yep, there we go. That's the run. That's the one I want. Okay, and I want to go back over to this. I want to share that, and then share it to my news feed. Paste. Okay, post. Okay, and then it's making all the sounds. Your stream is back up. Thanks. Okay, cool. And then I want to go back over to my channel and click on this. Okay. And then I want to make that muted. I'm going to post that here. Okay. Hey, everyone. The stream is back up. Come join us. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay, and then just have that post it there, and post it over here. Okay. Okay, now we should be good. I think that's good there. That's good there. And cool. Okay. Okay. Cool. Sweet. We're back. So, for those of you guys, thank you for coming back, guys. Sorry we had to have this little bit of a hiccup here. So just to kind of recap everything, again, we're talking about specifically depression. And we're going through a little bit of Scott's testimony, what he's been through, how he's handled depression, everything, and also just kind of going over the topic of depression in general, and specifically like just kind of different methods of how to process through that and get to the other side of depression. Because honestly, working through depression it's a big thing. It's not something that just wave and now it's gone and done. No, there's a lot of restructuring you have to go through when it comes to getting through depression, ways of thinking that are not helpful, that you have to shift towards the way God thinks about you and stuff. Just about with anything really in general, when it comes to depression or anxiety, you're dealing with an addiction of any sort, it just, most of the time, these things take time, and we want to talk about that from a really real perspective, and again, share with you guys how we've gone about doing that, especially with how Scott's done it, since this is something that hits close to home for him. So what we've talked about is, what does depression specifically look like in your life? And we covered, it comes in the form of like lethargy, of this kind of like this feeling of like, I don't really even have energy to do a thing, because it's just, where is the energy? Nothing like really like do I fit or belong in society? No. What is the purpose of things? Just not being able to find purpose and just kind of going into this downward spiral and stuff. Depression can be hidden behind people that are doing really strong, but you can sense they have all of the weight of the world on their shoulders. Sometimes they're very funny and they like to make you laugh, and that's kind of like their front, because they don't want you to go through what they're personally going through. So they'll make you laugh, which then kind of gives some brevity to the moment. But if you look beyond it, you can see the sheer weight on your shoulders. These are signs you could see that this person is going through depression. And so I want to actually specifically pick up from that point. And actually, I guess we could go into the most recent question that you're asking here, which would be, how do you reconcile the truth of healing through Jesus and the reality of what you deal with on a daily basis? So I want to go into that. That was specifically your question, Tim.
Yeah, let me dig into this a little bit more.
Go
because
for
I think
it.
It needs some more depth.
You're good at this.
Because when I look at depression, since I've never dealt with it, and this is true for anybody, if you've never gone through something and you see somebody going through something or having an issue, it's just like, fix it. It's not a thing. I think that mindset is also a lot more toxic in the Christian community, where we have Jesus And the Bible's full of things that say, by his stripes you are healed. You will do all things and more in my name that I've done. Like heal people, raise them from the dead, do all this stuff. And then sometimes people say it's not biblical to be sick. It's not biblical to be depressed. You don't have a relationship with Jesus if you give in to the desires of your mind. And it's like, how do you reconcile this? How do you reconcile the truth? Just go to evangelical TV.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but like that, where the heck does that come from? Jeez.
Right. But you have some people, especially people from the I don't want to isolate them. People from the non-believer camp, who are non-believers from the perspective of, oh, Christians are all hypocrites. Christianity's not real. God's not real. If he's real, then prove it to me, the whole testing God thing. So if you're a Christian and if Jesus is who he says he is, Scott, why do you deal with depression? Your book, your God says you shouldn't have to deal with that. So what the heck, man? Are you depressed or are you a Jesus follower? Because you can't be both.
That's not helpful.
So that's actually an interesting take on it, because I've been there. I've been that person who, like, I wasn't raised in a Christian household. I was raised in a very, not atheist, more agnostic, where it will make your own decisions, find your own facts kind of thing.
Interesting.
I was not raised as a Christian. That came for me later in life. So I've definitely been in that place of like, well, you're a Christian and, you say that you can pray away sickness and pray away health. So do it. It's not happening. So what's your point? I've been in that place, and I'll tell you right now, it is a very cynical, and this is for me personally. I'm not going to try to call out anybody, but looking back on that time in my life is a very cynical place. It is a very lonely place, and it's honestly a very angry place. Because and actually, I would say no, I'm saying it out loud. Less angry and more hopeless. Jesus healed by touching, he laid his hands on people and they were healed. He didn't even have to do that. He would speak and people would be healed. People would touch the hem of his robe and they would be healed. Mm-hmm. We have that authority as Christians. We can proclaim healing. And it is the work of God that healing will happen as well. What I was missing in those times was the perspective to receive that. Where, sorry, my cat is over here. He sees a bird and he's chittering like a madman. You're very distracting, Belle. Go away. But no, it's before I was saved and before I really gave it any thought of that, healing, mental healing, emotional healing, physical healing, all of it, that was actually available to me and possible. I thought I was on my own. This is a problem I'm dealing with in my own head, and I am going to have to deal with it myself. And it goes back into what I was saying earlier, where that's a burden I'm putting on myself that I don't have to. I can take that off of me and give it to God. And for some people, myself included, even as Christians, we know it's there. God's healing is there. God is there to take that burden off of you. Cast all your cares onto him. We get in our own heads. And because we're human, we're imperfect. We get inside of our own heads. Jesus healed with a thought. Jesus was or is what we aspire to, but we are still human. We are inherently imperfect beings, and and while the healing is there and everything, you have to be in that place to receive it. It doesn't just come by itself. You have got to welcome it in, and being saved is a first step on that. Welcoming Jesus into your heart entirely is a huge step on that. There were demons I faced, like I'm talking actual demons here, that like I faced in my mind during the times where I was depressed and before I was saved. And after getting saved and after talking to some very good friends of mine and giving me some very good advice on how to deal with it, on how to combat that, I don't deal with that anymore. I don't deal with that depth of depression, or that form of depression where like I have to shut myself away. I have to lock myself into a cage because I am depressed and that's where I am. And that this depression rules me. And so now that being saved is freeing. And it gives me that clarity that, yes, I'm going to have to put in some effort. I'm going to have to talk about it, which is ridiculously uncomfortable. Anybody who has been through depression will know talking about it is probably one of the hardest things to do. And talking about it in an honest and open way is, and I'm kind of going through it right now, the words just kind of
lock up,
don't come. Yeah, you get sort of this freeze.
Yeah, I understand that.
But that cage of I have to deal with it myself is probably one of the worst things you can deal with on depression. That feeling that you are alone, and you're not. You have a Father in heaven. You have a Savior in Jesus. You have a Holy Spirit that lives inside of you. You are never alone when you are saved. And even if you are not saved, I would love to invite anybody who has not prayed that prayer, who has not said those words, to open up their heart and be saved, especially if you are dealing with depression. Because that simple act of being saved is like a long jump up the staircase of a climb. I mean, it's like taking a shortcut elevator up the stairs of battling depression.
I feel that.
Yeah, and it's because it's that I am not alone. Yeah. And I have to remind myself of that. And my wife reminds me of that all the time because I forget it. I get into my own head again, and I get into that place of, well, I have to deal with it. I have to deal with it. It's my problem. I have to deal with it. And so I have to bring myself back to that place, or my wife brings me back to that place of, you don't have to deal with it alone. God is there. You can lean on him. You can give it to him, and through him, it is all possible. I actually think I had another Bible verse about that. Yeah, here it is. Matthew 11, 28 through 30. It's, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that's very reassuring.
Yeah.
That, you know, regardless of how heavy it feels on me, he can take it.
Yeah.
And through him, it can be lifted off of me.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, let me ask you something. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
you know, we've talked about what depression looks like in your life and how it starts and how to recognize it and how you reconcile it with Jesus and everything. But the things you were talking about just now, you said it's really easy to feel like you're alone. It's really easy to feel like you're the only one that deals with it, that nobody else gets it. And Deathbane said, at first I found it hard to talk to others about depression, but after a while it no longer is hard for me. I'm seeing a similarity between a lot of things that a lot of people go through, like these, it's almost like a stigma or a dogma that we adhere to as we're growing and, you know, maturing and stuff. And we believe it, even though it's not true, you know, like there are always people out there that are willing to listen. But the question I guess I want to posit is, how has the public representation of depression influenced the way you respond to it?
Interesting.
So I've seen it from a couple different angles in the public eye. Personally, when I first started dealing with depression, it was a matter of hide it, because if my friends know I'm going through this, if my family knows I'm going through this, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think that there's something wrong with me mentally. They're going to think I'm not all right, and everybody's going to be worried about me. Everybody's going to be walking on eggshells around me, tiptoeing around me, or like trying to talk me down from a ledge, kind of thing. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be a focus of people's worry. I didn't want to be an inconvenience to people. And
you didn't want to be a burden.
Yeah. Back to the whole topic of being a burden. It's there throughout depression. It really is. And that feeling of I am a burden if I share all of this, or I am a burden because this is going on in my life. Excuse me. That can either cause that feeling of isolation where, like, okay, well, I can't share this with people. And I can't let it be known that I am suffering from depression or that I'm battling depression. That either becomes in and of itself an isolation, or it leads to a self-isolation. To where that, and again, it all just stacks on top of each other and it compounds to where, I feel like a burden. Therefore, I'm not going to talk to my friends about it. Therefore, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to have, a public persona and a private depression. And, it stacks so heavily because you get into that lonely place or that isolated place of, I can't share this because it's a burden to others. And so you start feeling lonely in that place. And then it drops into the vicious cycle of depression again. I feel lonely, therefore I am sad, therefore I am depressed, therefore this, that, the other. I don't have a place, I don't have a purpose, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And that's where you see some people, that cycle gets them so very low that it gets to that point of, why am I here? Why do I need to be here? Do I need to be here? Like, in the world. Yeah.
Hearing that makes me think, though, like a couple things. Like, maybe that's part of the reason why I had a hard time fitting in going through grade school in general, is because through all of my struggles that I had, with the exception of specifically, I didn't really talk about my addiction. Here we go, taking it back to zero again. We have, Tim and I have a joke, like we can't go through a thought to rage session without mentioning porn. So we have a track record, and we're resetting it back to zero. With the exception of that, like in general, like most of my problems I wore relatively on my sleeve. You know, if I was upset,
Mm-hmm.
if I was angry or something, you knew that. But I think a lot of people in general, whether it's depression or other things, tend to do, I think in general, anyone who deals with any sort of issue has some sort of front that they put on because they don't want to, there's certain things they don't want to have to deal with, whether it being they don't want to be a burden, they don't want people to think less of them, they don't want whatever, and so they'll have certain stuff, act certain ways, you know, be certain things. Because I could think of, like, you know, a person who wants to be accepted, and they've, you know, like, they've been rejected because of how little they've had, you know, would put on the front of, here's these nice things that I have, this nice clothing, this nice car, this nice whatever. In the case of, like, me, the things that I did hide, you know, struggling with porn, I didn't talk about that because I didn't want to lose the very few friends that I had. So, you know, I'll talk about all these other things that I'm dealing with that are not so private and disgusting. So that way, at least the few friends that I do have, I won't potentially lose. You know, or someone who regularly lies about things because, you know, they actually don't know what they're doing and they don't want to come across as incompetent or invaluable or unvaluable, not unvaluable. So instead, they'll lie their way through certain things, and you get the picture of, like, the cat with, like, the security dog thing on the back, and it's like when you lied on your resume but still got the job.
Still got the job. Yep.
Yep. But it's interesting. I think that's probably another issue. A reason why I probably didn't fit in a lot is because, with the exception of that one thing, in general, if I didn't like something, if I wasn't doing well, for the most part, you would know. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people that they don't want to deal with they want to be the perfect whatever. So to see someone who doesn't fit that would make them either feel uncomfortable, like, what's wrong with that person? Or like, oh, I feel that, but I don't want to be in with that weakness or something or whatever. I don't know. I'm just me processing my own life. Sorry. This is not about me.
You know, on my side, it's really hard to connect with people that have continuous issues like that. Not because I don't like them, but because I don't know what to do for them. Maybe it's a guy thing too, because guys always want to fix the problem. And when somebody's got a problem that you can't fix and that they're going to go through, it's like, it's almost, have you ever seen Despicable Me?
Yes.
You know how Gru was trying to interface with his daughters, and he's like, what do I do? Do I just, like, pat you on the head? Like, I'm not really sure how to engage with you. And so it's like I create distance because on one hand, I don't want to steamroll and say, hey, just get over it and minimize what they're going through. And on the other hand, it's like I feel inadequate. So, okay, I'm just going to leave you over there. That way somebody can come along who is gifted in those areas can actually help you. And I think that's a deceit too, because, you know, this was going to be my next question. Let me go ahead and throw it up.
Go for it.
If it wants to come up. Do you think it's possible to ever be depression free? And also, what's the difference between being free from depression and fixing it? Because in my mind, it's like, okay, well, let's just go fix this. And sometimes people go through things that last their entire lives that cannot be fixed. I think, at least. But what do you think about that, Scott?
So the first part of that question is extremely easy to answer. Can you ever be free from depression? Yes, you can. That's a really easy, simple answer. But how you get there, so much more difficult. And it goes into the second part of how can you fix it. And like you, Tim, I'm a problem solver kind of guy. I see something broken, need to fix it. See a problem, need to solve it. And then when I look inward and turn that lens onto myself, it's like I see this problem, but I don't see how to fix it. Is the problem that I have faced in the past and currently as well. It's been sort of, well, what do I do? Do I talk to my pastor? Do I get a counselor? Do I talk to a psychologist? Do I pray and that's it? Do I look for a way to change my thinking in the natural and let God's healing work in the spiritual, which that is probably one of the best things you can do. It is, one, give it to God, and that will be my theme throughout this entire thing. I am not big enough to deal with this. He is. And whenever I say he, I always point over my right shoulder. I don't know why I do that. God's right here. He's right. You don't see him. He's on the ceiling right there. No.
He's on the ceiling. Wow.
No, he is everywhere. He is inside us. He is everything. But it's one of those weird problems where, like, the solution sounds so simple, and saying it out loud is the easiest thing to do. But actually putting in the effort to do it, there is that mental block of, well, no, I don't need to put in this effort, or what's the point in putting in this effort, or that would be difficult and take effort, and you get into that cycle again of, I don't have the energy to put in the effort to fix it. And that's that's one of the worst things you can tell yourself is I don't have the energy to put in the effort. You really got to kick your own butt and say, yeah, you do. You got to get it done. Yeah, you've got to go find help. You've got to talk to people. Don't let it be that stigmatized cage. Don't let it be that thing that keeps you down. And, talking to friends, being open and honest with them, that helps. It really does. It helps you not so much in the way that, like, that's going to heal you and that's going to cure your depression, because it's not.
Right.
What it really helps you to do is to be honest. Because if you are in the same place talking to yourself inside your own head, you are only talking to you.
Right.
So the only perception you are getting is your own. And if you're already in this lonely place of self-doubt and self-loathing and depression, why are you talking to yourself? Why? That is not the expert advice you need. And it's because if you're already in that place of self-doubt, how do you encourage yourself?
Right.
How do you lift yourself up by talking to yourself when your own mind and your own perception is what's holding you down? Yeah. So talking to friends and talking to your pastor, talking to a counselor, talking to a trusted family member, and that's another thing. If for anybody listening, if you're going to talk to people about this, make it people you trust. Make it people who care about you. Because they will be absolutely the most brutally honest with you that they can be. But they will do it out of love.
Right.
They will do it out of caring, and they will do it out of a desire to actually help you.
Yeah.
Like, for me, talking to my pastor is a great thing. Talking to my wife is an amazing thing. And there are other friends that I will talk to about this stuff. I know, Brandon, you and I in the past have had very long lunch conversations about some very important, deep, and mentally taxing subjects. But go out and seek help and talk to people.
Yeah. And
that really gets you into that place of honesty and it gives you that other perspective from other people where you can actually start being honest with yourself. And then from there, you give to God.
Yeah.
Because the healing is not going to come from talking to your friends. The healing is not going to come from talking to your pastor. The healing, and you can do all of those things. and feel better. But then a week later, you slide right back down. And that real healing, not just that temporary, I'm good, you're not. That real healing is when you give it to God. And I'm not going to say that I'm even in that place yet. I am getting to that place. I am working and trying to make a serious effort now of seriously educating myself on scripture, and opening up and talking to more people and getting sort of that spiritual guidance, doing counseling with my pastor. I'm still fighting my battle. I still go through depressive episodes.
There's something that's particularly coming to mind that I want to kind of bring out in this real quick. You were talking about specifically about like how the victory doesn't really come just simply by talking to people. Right. Like that's a part of the process. It's necessary to do those things, but it comes when you give it to God. And there's something that's really kind of like hitting me in this moment that I want to kind of like unpack here. I think honestly, as one who has dealt with anxiety, like the anxiety end of it, like so like whereas for me, where I typically like some people would go into depression, I more go into these acute like moments, and then I have to like calm down and like okay, like life for me is more like this like I think of the acute and the obtuse angle. I'm like more the acute, like everything's just sharp and like and then once you get past it, you're good again. It's shorter. But all that said, I think like working through depression, honestly, you will have the victory, but it is a lifelong process because God wants us to be interconnected. So so I feel like to think that we can get to a place where we no longer need to get connected with people is not good. We are always going to need people.
No.
And I think the reason why God is all that much more important, and why you're talking about like he is the most important aspect of this thing, is because he's the one that is consistently always present. So whereas I may not be there for you, and Tim may not be there for you, your wife may not be able to be there for you, God always will, and he will never leave you or forsake you. He constantly loves you. He's constantly present. He's constantly proud of the efforts you're making as you're moving towards greater and greater righteousness. And so that's powerful. Yeah. Like I will be there for some of the time. Your wife will be there for even more of the time, but God will be there for all of the time. And so I feel like that's the most important thing. And like I'm in a current place right now where I'm learning this more heavily. Thank you, COVID. Where I'm learning this more heavily of the importance to put God first, because God is always there. He knows what I'm doing. He knows why I'm doing it. He knows what I'm going to do before I even do it. And so there's no reason for me to hide from him. Just be honest with him, like, God, I don't want to do this. I don't have the energy to do this today. Whatever, I don't want to do this, but I need your help, not my will, but your will. Please help me. And God's been, one of the things that God has really been working on me, and he's been using counselors to kind of guide me in this direction, is I have put a lot of time and effort into knowing God the Father and the Holy Spirit. And so it's like, and I think it's perfect, because it's like I have two parents. I have my dad and I have my mom, and I've spent a lot of time with both. So I'm very comfortable with the Holy Spirit and Father, not so comfortable with Jesus. I'm also an only child. So that sibling interaction, I'm still learning that. And they're like, you know what, you're used to these two things. You need to spend more time with Jesus. And I'm like, how can I do that? Because it's like, I thought, like, I've already been doing good. Like, Jesus saved my life. Woo! And I get to spend more time with the Father, and the Holy Spirit comforts me. But I'm like, what about Jesus? And Jesus is closer than a brother, which is like, what does that even mean? Yeah. Like, that's like a huge concept to me that I'm still processing. and there's been like a piece of action that I can do that I've been working on, that like whenever something exciting happens, like, you know how like you would want to like immediately contact your best friend, like, hey, guess what happened, you know, you want to share it with that person, to instead like go to Jesus first and tell him about it, and then go to your friends about it, because he can fill, like, for me, like I have like, sometimes I want to share things with people and I want to fill my social meter, but I can't because my friends aren't available, but Jesus is. So kind of getting used to making him even more of my best friend, and like, hey, Jesus, guess what?
Right.
And talk to him about that and stuff. And so what you were talking about made me think about this. It's like first and foremost, for those of you guys who are listening, like, regardless if it's depression or it's anxiety or porn or whatever it may be that you're dealing with, it's something that you constantly, like, you want not constantly, but you want to regularly have people in your life to talk about these things, because like you were saying, Scott, like, you know, there's a lot of things that make sense here that don't make sense here once it comes out of your mouth. And like, if you can't figure it out, why you keep trying to figure it out with yourself, and you can't go talk to someone else about it? Like, I feel that so much. Like, as you could see when I was getting the stream set up, I kept externally processing what I was doing. Like, I was just talking about what I was doing. I've learned to keep things out of my head and out in the open, which keeps my mind clear a lot of the time. But it's just like, there's a lot of things that, like, after saying this, what the heck was I thinking? And there's like a scripture verse that says, they say, it was clear in my head a moment, it's going to come to me. It was, confess your faults one to another that you may be saved. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. But that first part, confess your faults one to one another that you may be saved. It's like, that's a so big important part of like getting the lethargy, the tiredness, everything out. There is a person on Twitter that does animations that I follow. Well, I don't actually fully follow him because some of their stuff is a little bit like, okay, this is not necessary. But there was one thing that they did that actually was good, and it was this picture of like this guy, and there's like all this dark mess moving around him. And then, like, and his eyes were just blank. Like, there were no pupils, it was just blank. It was, like, kind of like, ugh. And the text was, talk about it. And so the guy, like, opened his mouth, and, like, all the black stuff came up through his body, out of his head, and straight out of his mouth. And then, like, he was a normal person again. You could see his eyes more clearly and everything. And I was like, this is a perfect picture. It's like, if you don't talk about it, there's all of this darkness on the inside of you. And then once you talk about it, it's just like, it's no longer there controlling you anymore. It's like, wow, I feel a lot better. And like, there's like a second where the guy's like crying, and then he wipes his face and he's good again. And it's just like, I feel that so much. But I think it's like, I think it's like so important to like, we're always going to need people to talk about, like, whether we're on a high and you're doing good and depression has no place in your heart whatsoever, or you're in the deepest valley and like you're one step of wanting to end it all. Like, you're always going to need people through it. And like, I think it's really interesting, like how your wife, like, you start to say things and she's like, no, don't speak in those ways, because that's the whole purpose for Thought Raid. It's like, I recognize the way you start building up energy to do the things you don't want to do is as you begin to confess the right things. I'll share with you guys something I'm going through right now. Thank God the counter is already set to 0. But this week, this week, I've been doing good for a solid 2 months. Since August, I was doing really good. I was staying away from pornography. There was some things that God revealed to me that I needed to do, some things that I needed to speak over myself and stuff. And so I was doing pretty good. And then a couple days ago, just hit a wall again. And just like all these new things came up again. And I had to go through it. Yeah. And God has been really, once again, working on what I'm saying about myself, to one, be kind to myself. Like, one of the things I've been working on is like, Brandon, like, I no longer lust over people. I love people. And I know, flesh, you really want this, but I'm feeding the spirit today, and I'm not gonna let you deprecate yourself with these imageries. I'm not gonna go there with you today. You deserve better. And I just like this is no longer who I am. Like, my heart breaks for people who are in pornography, because a lot of people, they've gotten there because of sex trafficking, or they feel like there's only one way they can pay the bills, or they have low self-esteem. I don't want to continue to further that industry. My heart breaks for them. I no longer am going down that path anymore. And in the same way, when you're feeling like I don't have energy, no, I do have energy. I am not a burden, and I deserve to be joyful in the Lord. The joy of the Lord is my strength. I can do this. It may not be easy, but I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna get the help that I need. God, I thank you that you help me to strengthen me, to help me to see things from your perspective. I'm worth it. I am your special possession, and I want all that you have for me. Thank you for empowering me to get things done, even though I don't feel like doing it today.
Right.
Just changing your self-confession. It doesn't make sense in the moment, because like when I was dealing with porn again, like I felt like I was right back to being an addict again. And I was like, nope, remember what I told you. Remember these confessions. And as I began to do that, like some of the anxiety started lifting just from that alone. Like, there are other processes. I've had to talk about it since that point. Like we would talk about, there still is that importance of like going to other people. But just taking the time to change my self-talk to something more encouraging and empowering, and recognizing my identity over my feelings makes all the difference.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Tim, help me out. Do you have other questions on your mind? You're good with questions. You got questions?
Well, I've always got questions, but I think we're saturated for our time. And we brought Deathbane in the channel. Did he have something to say?
Yes. Let me unmute you real quick, Death. Do you happen to have any kind of questions or things that you want to talk about specifically?
I mean, earlier you asked the question about whether or not it's possible to be free of depression, and that was a thing where it was said that yes, you can, and I from what I know, it's not for everyone. There are some people who can, sure, but there's definitely people who just are incapable of being free of it, because it is just a abnormality that happens. Your brain doesn't connect up right, and so certain people are incapable of completely getting rid of it. They can mitigate the effects of it, but they'll never be free of it.
I don't know about that. What are your thoughts on that one, Scott?
Again, I see where you're coming from, and I come from a medical family. There's a ton of my relatives who are in medicine. I used to go see a psychologist myself when I was younger, and I've dealt with things like ADHD, where I've been on medication and everything, and where it is like there is something in my brain that is different. That is a I guess in some ways a disconnect, or in some ways a just use sort of like an electrician's terms, a different wiring. And like, for those people that deal with that sort of mentally, yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but I do still believe that freedom exists for those people. And again, I go back to, for me, it's a faith thing. All things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. God can heal all wounds, mental, physical, emotional. and again, it's not an immediate thing. God will meet you where your faith is, and that's something that my wife tells me all the time. God will meet you where your faith is, and for me personally, and I'll only speak for me personally, because I will not put myself in a place where I claim to speak for other people, because everybody is unique, every situation is unique, and some people are, I mean, some people have dealt with depression in ways that I will never deal with and that I can never understand. I've had to be the person to talk friends off the ledge. One of my friends had a bottle of pills in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other, and I opened the door to his room while I was there, and I saw him with it, and he looked up at me and said, "I'm going to take all of both of these and just end myself right here."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why the hell would you do that? What is wrong with you? And like, I sat and we probably talked for about 3 hours, and I had to talk him back from the ledge. And that he had reached a level of depression, and his mother had just died. He was dealing with a couple other mental issues, bipolar, ADHD, a couple other things. Very rough family life, that kind of thing. And it's stuff that I hadn't been through, but I just sat and I talked with him, and yes, freedom, I believe, and I believe this because I have hope for myself for it, is that you can reach freedom from depression, because that is my goal. It is. So my personal journey, the end of it I see is freedom from depression and able to live my life completely depression free.
Yeah.
Whether I get to that in this lifetime or whether I am freed of it when I go home to God.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
my main thing I'm trying to get at here is I don't think it's possible for all people. Because it's like, for me, I have ADHD of my own. And I don't think that's ever just going to go away, because that's there's wiring that's gone wrong in my brain.
And I deal with that same thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I am in that place with my ADHD, and so I get that with depression. It's for some people it is a medical thing or a biological thing, and like family history of depression kind of thing.
Exactly.
And to those people, I would say freedom looks different.
Yeah.
The medical thing is there, but it doesn't have to be what controls you. You can...
I just think that it's when you're trying to give across a message, you need to be careful of, because there are some people, let's say, who do have they're medically whatever, and then they're like, oh, I can be free of this, like, entirely.
Yeah.
And it's like they might get a false thing in their brain, making them do things that aren't healthy for them. Because it's like, whenever you're talking about serious topics, you always need to be careful of those people who, need the help. Who might. And
for those people, I would say don't do anything unhealthy. If it is a medical problem that you are dealing with, and you are controlling it with medicine and everything, it's not my personal thing. I've never been on antidepressants. I've never had to be. But I'd say do what you're doing medically. In the natural, do what you can. Do what works for you if that is your condition, your actual physiological condition.
There's nothing wrong with having to use medication to help with battling depression or things of that nature, especially if it's approved and we've been able to work through outlets for that.
But the thing for me is on the more emotional and spiritual side, which has been my battle with depression. It hasn't been a medical thing. It has been for starting off, emotional thing, because I had no spiritual life when I started off in depression, and then when I got saved, it became a spiritual thing for me as well. So my thing is, medically, do what you need to do. Spiritually and emotionally, trust in people, trust in your friends, and first and foremost, and most importantly, trust in God. Because especially for Christians and people who are of faith, all of those things are interconnected. Your spiritual health, your physical health, your emotional health, they're all connected. And it might surprise you, but one thing, if you sort of address one issue, it can help with the others. And that's sort of where I'm coming from. But again, medically, if it's like a clinically diagnosed depression, do what you need to do, get the actual like medical help that you need.
Yeah.
I yeah.
You gonna say something, Kim?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I got something I want to say that I think would tie it up in a nice little bow. And there's this story that I was told a long time ago, and you see it sometimes on social media where it pops up, and the dude's on an island waiting for some kind of rescue, right? And a boat comes by, and they're like, "Hey, hop on the boat, let us rescue." And the guy's like, "Nah, I'm waiting for Jesus." And then a plane comes, lowers down the ladder. He's like, "Hey," and they're like, "Yo, come on up the ladder." And he's like, "Nah, I'm waiting on Jesus." And the dude dies, gets to heaven, goes up to the gates, and he's like, "What the heck, man?" And God's like, "Dude, I sent you a boat and a plane, right?" And I think when people look at life through the lens of a Christian, they overlook science. They overlook the wisdom. They just,
especially in the beginning.
Yeah, they can't see the forest for the trees, because there's
that's definitely true.
There's a guy at our church, and his son has had, I would assume, close to 100 surgeries for a tumor in his brain. And I was at his house talking to him last night, and I was like, "Man, like, how do you reconcile this? Like, does this stuff still stress you out?" And he's like, you get to a point where circumstances no longer stress you out, but people do, because circumstances are always going to be bad, and depending on how you look at it, but it's our choice on how we respond to it. But people are different, because people, they have free will. Circumstances don't have free will.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about that, earlier, just, this is wrapping it up with a clean bow tie, whatever. Earlier, you said that when we were identifying depression, you said that sometimes it feels like you just can't get out of the bed, and the question is, what is the purpose? Like, why should I even try?
Yeah.
And it's rooted in hopelessness, right? But if you go to 1 Corinthians 13, which pretty much sums up how we should live our lives, it says, faith, hope, and love, these 3 things abide, right? And so some people might look at their life like our friend Joel, who's had a tumor in his brain and has had multiple surgeries. And like all the top doctors in the world are perplexed. They don't know what to do about it, right? And yet the kid I think he's 19 now. He has some of the craziest faith that I've seen of any. Like, he'll go into the hospitals and he'll pray over the nurses, and he'll pray over the doctors and other sick people in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And it's really easy for us to look at our circumstances, especially something like depression, or like me, insecurity, or like Brandon, anxiety. And everybody's got their own thing. And it's really easy to look at it like, I'm never going to be free from this. Well, you're up until now, you haven't been free from it, but you don't know what the rest of your life looks like. And maybe that's your torch to carry, so God can do something really crazy with it until the day that he frees you from it. For instance, my mom died from cancer. I wanted her to be free from that. Can she be free from cancer? Yes. What does it look like for me? For me, it looks like her rising up off the bed, no cancer. But to God and to her, it looks like her going to heaven. It looks like her choosing, I don't want to fight this anymore, because I want to be with Jesus. And what you said earlier, just the idea of hopelessness. I think we just have to hope that tomorrow is a new day, and hope that tomorrow God is going to do something with it, or God can heal it, or that it can get better. You have to turn that around. You legitimately just have to take your circumstances and say, circumstances, you don't have free will. I have free will, and my free will chooses to be hopeful.
Yeah. I think one that's in closing this up, I think one thing that's really important is that Will you ever be completely free in this from this? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it might be in the life to come, but I don't think that should be necessarily the focus. I've been feeling this really pressing inclination that the focus should be on what can I do today? What can I do with where I'm at right now? Because what you can do now, as you're focused on where you're headed and what you're able to do today, that will guide you towards a direction where maybe you get to a place where you only struggle with depression once every month or once every 3 months or a year, or I don't know, just it lengthens in time because you're working on your current steps that you do have in front of you. Maybe your steps is you need to take something to help with the ADHD or the depression or something, an antidepressant, something to help suppress the constant shouting thoughts in your head, because unfortunately we live in a broken world where people are, sins cause death and entropy to happen in this world. Sometimes people are born with Down syndrome or different things. Like, that's not a part of God's goodwill, but it happens because of sin. So maybe the step is you need to find some medication. Maybe the next step is you really feel like you need to open up to someone that you can trust. And we do have videos that talk about who can I trust about, different things when it comes to addictions or depression or things of that nature. I think it's the root of addiction is where we kind of talked a little bit about that back. It was like a couple months ago, which you can look up on our YouTube. Maybe it's a matter of like you've been speaking only negative things about you. You wake up your day and your expectations is for something bad to happen rather than what could be done, what you want to see happen. Like, just because it could go wrong doesn't mean it will go wrong. God tells us to not worry about tomorrow because tomorrow has its own burdens. Just focus on today because today has enough troubles. Just focus where you're at. When you work on where you're at and what you do have to deal with and what you are presently going through, you are much more empowered to take care of today's troubles than you can foresight into what could possibly happen tomorrow. You're not there yet, so you can't do anything about it. Focus on where you're at today. But I feel like the true victory from any sort of thing that you're going through comes through focusing on where you're at right now and not worrying about if I could just get to this place, if I could just get to a place where I'm depression free or addiction free or anything of that nature. It's like way too many eggs in the future basket. Like, what can you do today? What are the things you need to do today and to focus on them? Like, if you're hearing this, don't just immediately drop everything and just stop all the things you're doing. Let's start doing this one thing. No, keep working with what you know is working. Yeah. And just find things to add to it to continue to build in the direction that you want to head. So again, you may not be able to get to a place where there's complete victory, but you can get to a place where maybe you can go several days where this is not an issue, or even just one day or whatever. But there are steps you can take today, and that's what we're here for. You can grow from this place. It's not hopeless. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not hopeless. Like, there is, it's like in the same way, if you lost a leg, you're never going to get that leg back unless there's a miracle happen. But you can definitely strengthen your other leg, and you can definitely strengthen your core muscles, and you can get a prosthetic leg. That seems a little less, extreme than other cases. But in the same way, though, consider, you can talk to people. You can accept God into your life and allow him to constantly be that companion when other people aren't there. You can, get medical attention to help, with those oppressive, because I know some people they have the static where there's just 1,000 voices and it's really hard to think. Or they may have the critic, which is just constantly everything is wrong and it just always, just one voice, or they have the council of people in their brain that just is just judging them different things. It's whatever that case may be, there are ways, there are methods and tools to deal with that. And so I guess the main thing is just, I want to leave you guys with hope that it can get better. It may not get to perfection because of the world we live in, but it can get better. I think ultimately it would be good to move to a place where, regardless of what oppressive things you're feeling, that you can move beyond that. You can take a step forward, maybe a baby step, maybe just a half an inch, but you can keep moving forward into not allowing that to be the ultimate defining factor of who you are, but that you are much more dynamic than just one thing. And you are able to move from that place a little bit forward each day. I think that's the beautiful thing. I am not an addict. I might deal with moments where there's certain things that come up that make me want to go back to that. But at the end of the day, my identity is not in my struggle. My identity is in who God made me to be. It's something greater than that. And that's what I move towards until the day I fully obtain that, either in this life, like you mentioned, Scott, or in heaven. Whatever that may look like, I don't know, but I press forward. And I think the reason why a lot of people like to latch on to the belief that you can be completely free is because I think it's almost necessary. Like, I think it's good to have that as a future goal, not to let it bang us over the head or make us feel less than when we don't hit the goal, because you're not a terrible person if you don't immediately come out of this. There's nothing wrong with you because I can't just, I'm not depressed anymore. No, that's not realistic. But I think it is still good to have a goal to press towards, of I want to move towards that day where maybe I won't have this anymore. And then just have that, because it's like the imagery is where you're setting the bar. If you set the bar really low, that's how far you're going to go. Either it's that or lower. But if you set the bar really high, you may not make it. You probably won't make it, but you'll definitely make it higher than you made it if you set the goal way down here. So that's the whole point. Yeah. So, do you have any closing thoughts, Scott, or are we good to move from this place?
I would say my final closing thought, touching on what you just said, is hope. You might not get there in this time that you have on Earth, but you will get there. Again, whether it's in the natural now, or whether it is when you go home, when we leave this earth and join God in heaven. It is an ongoing battle. My battle is ongoing. I am definitely not at the end of my fight with depression yet. And so my closing would be hope. You can always fight it. You do not have to be alone. You do not have to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. You have God on your side. You have people who love you. You have people who care about you. You have people who are standing beside you in this fight. And lean on those people, and most importantly, lean on God. And get yourself out of that cage of, I am alone.
Because you're not alone.
Yeah. You're not. You really aren't.
Everyone has struggles. We all have it. Even there, you may not have anybody who's going through the same struggles, but they can relate to it, because the Bible says we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Every one of us in some shape, way, or form has something that we missed the mark. So I can understand, because of my own struggles to a degree, what you're going through, and I can encourage you in the areas that I'm strong in, whereas you also can encourage me in the areas that you're strong in, and together we can create a beautiful friendship where we're both building each other up, rather than being alone, because you may not find someone who exactly knows, but you can definitely find people that are empathetic, and are willing to work with you. And now you have 2 people in this, and maybe 3 and 4. And I think that's where the strength comes from. I think for sure I am where I'm at because I have a lot of people around me. Because if I was by myself, the thoughts. I love all of our mutual friends here. Dan's been really good with that too. Like, he's made me really aware of certain things within me. And I'm like, oh. Thank you. Ow, but thank you.
Dan's good at that.
Yeah, he's really good at that. But all right. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching today. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week, Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because right now we're testing out a new thing. If this continues to go well, then we will continue to do it. Otherwise, next week we may, or not next week, but next week, we'll try another time, probably around maybe 5 or 6 or go back to 7. We'll just see how this goes. But otherwise, for all intents and purposes, this Monday, we are going live at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this Friday, I want to remind you guys that we have a special guest coming. His name is Samuel Perez. He is an ex-gay stripper who God set him free from homosexuality and brought him out of all that. And he wants to share his testimony and what God has brought him through with us. And so you will want to be there for that. That will be Friday at 4 p.m. But if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and share with your friends so we can help other people going through similar things. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again this Monday, 4 p.m. You guys have a good night.